Can you picture it? On an ordinary afternoon, you're carrying a bag of groceries, keying in the gate code you know by heart, only to see the screen flash access denied. A moment later, a text from your own daughter lands like a blade. We've changed all the locks and reset the gate code. Mom, you shouldn't stay here anymore. When the roof that was once your refuge becomes the place that expels you, banished by the very children you raised, what would you do? I'm glad you're here. Stay with me until the end. And tell me, what city are you watching my story from? I want to know just how far it's traveled. It was a Sunday evening. Around 5:30, the light outside was soft. With that golden tint it gets right before the sun dips below the rooftops. I slipped on my coat, my old beige one with the frayed sleeve, wrapped the scarf my late husband gave me years ago around my neck, and headed out. The air had a slight chill, not biting, just enough to make me keep my hands in my pockets as I walked. There's a small farmer's market just a few blocks away, near the Methodist church. I went there mostly out of habit, not need. I picked up a bunch of dried lavender. They keep the moths out of the drawers, and the smell reminds me of my mother. I also grabbed a carton of brown eggs and a small bag of those crisp butter waffle cookies I know Ava likes. On the way back, I was thinking about dinner. Ava had mentioned earlier she felt like having soup tonight. Something light, maybe chicken and wild rice. Marcus, her boyfriend, said he'd open a bottle of red they'd been saving. I imagined the three of us sitting around the kitchen table, like we did now and then when Lauren wasn't working late. Nothing fancy, just a quiet evening together. I got to the gate at 6:15. I typed in the code, but the keypad flashed red and buzzed. I frowned, thinking I must have hit the wrong numbers. I tried again, slowly this time, still nothing. Third try, still no luck. The keypad didn't even hesitate, it just rejected me, plain and fast. I stepped back and looked at the front door. Something felt off. That's when I noticed it. The front lock was shiny, new, completely different. Not just the keyhole either, but the whole plate around it. Brand new hardware, clean and bright like it had just been screwed in that morning. I stood there on the porch, clutching the grocery bag, unsure of what I was looking at. For a second, I thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe a repairman had come by and forgot to let me know. But my gut told me otherwise. The kind of quiet that surrounds betrayal isn't loud or dramatic. It's still. It creeps in without warning. I pulled out my phone. I was going to call one of the girls. Lauren, my eldest, or Ava, the youngest. They're the only ones who live in that house with me. The house I've paid for month after month. The house I believed was ours. Then I saw it. 3 missed calls from Lauren. 1 unread message. I opened the text. Mom, after many conversations, we've decided to change the locks and gate code. You shouldn't stay here anymore. We need our own space and don't feel safe with you living here. It's better if you find another place to stay. I read it twice. The words didn't make sense, not right away. I sat down slowly on the edge of the front steps, beside the little iron fence with the chipped paint I'd meant to repaint last spring. The bag of groceries slid from my lap to the ground. One of the eggs cracked against the concrete, a yolk spreading like a quiet wound. The bundle of lavender fell too, its stems breaking slightly against the step. Inside, the lights were on. The living room curtains moved gently from the ceiling fan. I could see a shadow pass by. Someone was definitely home. But no one came to the door. No one looked out. I called Lauren. It rang until voicemail. I tried Ava. The screen popped up a message. This number is not accepting calls at this time. They'd blocked me. I felt a cold I hadn't felt in years, not just in my hands or my cheeks, but inside my chest. Like something had been scooped out and replaced with empty air. I stood up, legs weak, and wandered toward the sidewalk. The wind had picked up, it cut right through my coat, but I hardly noticed. I walked past the neighbor's house, old Mr. Keller's place. His Christmas lights were already up, blinking red and green like nothing in the world had changed. At the corner, I saw the little park bench I sometimes rested on during my evening walks. I sat down, set the grocery bag beside me, and took out my phone again. My hands were stiff and cold, but I tapped through to the banking app, right at the top. A notification had popped up. Upcoming transaction, mortgage payment of $4,920 scheduled for 12:03. I stared at the screen. That same monthly charge I'd been paying without fail. No questions asked. No complaints. Just doing what a mother does. what a widow with 2 grown daughters and no real place of her own does. I remember once Ava said I was too generous. I thought it was a compliment. I'd laughed. Sitting there on that cold bench, under a flickering street lamp, I felt something shift. Not like an earthquake, but like a floorboard giving way under your foot. A quiet, sharp realization. I wasn't welcome in that house anymore. And worse, no one had the decency to look me in the eye and say it. I watched a car pull into the driveway from where I sat. It was Marcus's red sedan. He got out, carrying a grocery bag of his own. I thought for a second he might see me. He didn't. He went inside, closed the door, and that was that. I stayed there for maybe 20 more minutes. I don't really remember. Time goes funny when your life turns into something you don't recognize. When the people you've fed, raised, clothed, and consoled don't want you anymore. When your name becomes too heavy for them to carry in their own house. Eventually, I picked up the bag of groceries. The egg yolk had leaked through the bottom and stained the paper a dark yellow. I tied the handles together so it wouldn't spill further, and I walked. Nowhere in particular. Just away, not home, because that wasn't home anymore. I didn't know where I was heading, but I knew one thing. I couldn't go back. It's strange how clearly I remember those early days, right after Bill passed. I was 63, still trying to get my bearings without him after 3 years of marriage. His clothes still hung in the closet. His slippers stayed by the bed for months. I would wake up some mornings and instinctively reach for his side of the bed. Empty. Always empty. When Lauren and Ava invited me to move in, I didn't hesitate. Live with us, Mom, Ava had said on the phone. It'll be good for everyone. We'll be together. Lauren added, you shouldn't be alone in that old place. This is a new chapter. I thought, why not? They had just taken out a mortgage on a new house, together, 2 stories, open kitchen, lots of light. It was meant to be a shared space, a place for a fresh start. We even painted the hallway walls together. The first week I moved in, Ava picked a pale green that looked almost white under the sun. The first month, I offered to pitch in for expenses. I remember we were sitting at the dining table after dinner, made a roast chicken and mashed potatoes, and the girls were talking about how tight things were. I'll pay part of the mortgage, I said matter of fact. Lauren looked at Ava, a brief glance that told me they'd already discussed this. Well, Lauren started, we were thinking, if you could cover the mortgage fully, it would take a huge load off us. I mean, you don't pay rent anymore now, right? She smiled like it was a suggestion, not a statement. Ava chimed in, we could think of it as an investment in our future. Like, your legacy, kinda. I remember pausing. It did make sense. I had the life insurance money from Bill's policy. And the thought of helping my daughters feel secure, to give them a home where they could thrive, that felt right. So I said yes, just like that. From then on, every first of the month, $4,900 went straight from my account to the mortgage company. I never missed a payment, not once. That first year, I did more than just pay the mortgage. When the washing machine broke down, I ordered a new one the same day, $1,200. The roof needed patching after a storm in March. I called a guy Bill used to trust and paid cash to get it done. I even bought a Dyson vacuum, which Ava had been eyeing for weeks. Lauren gave me a hug one night and said, Mom, you're always so thoughtful. Ava laughed. You're spoiling us, Mom. We'll get lazy like this. I laughed too, but deep down, I liked feeling needed. I liked being useful. Thanksgiving that year, I cooked everything: turkey, stuffing, sweet potato casserole, cranberry sauce, pumpkin pie. I started at 6 a.m. and was still cleaning dishes. Past 8 p.m., Ava brought Marcus that night, his first visit to our home. He was polite enough, helped himself to seconds. When I was doing dishes, I heard him whisper to Ava in the hallway, "This place is better than I thought." I could see myself living here. Ava didn't say anything in response, at least not that I could hear. Lauren got a new job around January. The hours were long, and she was gone most of the time. That left me and Ava and Marcus, who started showing up more often. Then one day, he just never left. He began using the garage, moved some clothes into Ava's room, stocked his favorite cereal in the pantry. There wasn't an official conversation about it. He just became part of the house. By spring of the second year, I moved into the small attic room. No one asked me to. I did it to give Ava and Marcus space. I set up a little reading chair by the window and a hot plate so I could make tea. I cooked upstairs, cleaned upstairs, stayed out of their way, but the mortgage, still me, always me. Then came the little messages. One day, I got a text from Lauren. Mom, can you move your shoes to the back door? They cluttered the entryway. Another time, Ava texted, could you limit your time in the bathroom to 10 minutes? Marcus has meetings in the morning. Then, the clothes in the living room. Maybe we can keep that space more tidy. At first, I brushed it off. They were busy. They were young. I was older. Maybe I didn't fit in quite as naturally anymore. But it started piling up, like little needles poking me one by one. I didn't say anything. I just adjusted, moved the shoes, set a timer for my showers, folded laundry in my attic room. One evening, I came down to put some water on the stove, and I caught a few words from the kitchen. The hallway light was off, so they didn't know I was there. Ava's voice, I feel like I can't fully relax when Mom's always around. Lauren, let's not push, just wait until the house is paid off. Things will fall into place then. I stood there, frozen, a spoon in my hand. The words looped in my head all night. That same night, I opened my journal, an old leather-bound one I used to write recipes in. I wrote, I thought I was giving them a home. Turns out, I was just buying time until they could find a way to make me disappear. It stung, but I couldn't even bring myself to confront them. I just kept on, paying, folding, cleaning, stepping aside. I started keeping quiet more often. The house didn't feel like mine. Sometimes I'd go a whole day without seeing either of them, even though we lived under the same roof. Ava and Marcus spent most of their time in the living room or kitchen. If Lauren came over, they stayed downstairs. They laughed, they drank, they played music. I stayed upstairs. I began ordering groceries online, had them delivered straight to my attic door. I boiled tea on my hot plate, microwaved leftovers in silence. I still paid the bills, gas, water, electricity, all divided evenly, but none of them ever said thank you. And the worst part, I started to expect that. I stopped being Diane, the mother. I became someone they tolerated, a name on a bank transfer, a background character in my own home. The house I thought we built together became a place where I was just tolerated, not welcomed. I wasn't their mother anymore. I was just the one paying the mortgage. It started on a Saturday night. Like a crack in the paint, you don't notice it first, until the wall crumbles. I was upstairs in the attic room, my little space that had grown smaller over time. I'd been reading a novel, some light mystery, something to pass the time. Downstairs, the music had started to get louder around 7, bassline thumping through the floorboards, bits of laughter floating up through the vents. I wasn't invited. Not that I expected an engraved invitation, but nothing. No knock on my door. No, hey Mom, we're having a few people over. Come join us. Not even a text. I sat with my book, pretending I didn't notice. But the truth is, you always notice when you're being excluded. It stings, like walking into a room where everyone stops talking. Sometime around 8:30, I decided to go downstairs and get some water. I tried to be quiet. I didn't want to be in the way, just in and out. But as I walked through the hallway and into the kitchen, I could feel the change in atmosphere, like stepping into someone else's party. Marcus was there. He was leaning against the kitchen island, holding a drink, laughing with someone I didn't recognize. When he saw me, his face didn't change. No smile, no hi Diane. He looked at me the way people look at janitors in a hotel lobby, like I didn't belong, but I was too harmless to stop. I opened the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and turned to leave. That's when Ava saw me. Mum, she said, her tone flat, almost annoyed. The living room's kind of packed right now. I was actually gonna ask if maybe you could turn in early tonight. Her eyes didn't meet mine. She was adjusting the volume on a speaker, one foot already pivoting back toward the party. I nodded. Sure, I said, even though it wasn't a question. I'll head back up. I walked upstairs slowly, my water bottle sweating in my hand, heart heavier than it should have been for such a short conversation. That night, I didn't read. I just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of conversation and laughter 2 floors below me. The next day was Sunday. Lauren came over. I saw her car pull into the driveway through the attic window. I waited, half hoping she'd pop her head in, even just to say hello. She didn't. I heard her voice downstairs, laughing, talking fast. She stayed nearly 2 hours. Dishes clinked, music played. Someone opened a bottle of wine. But no one called me down. Not once. I sat there, the book open on my lap, unread. The following week, I got a text from Ava around 10 a.m. Mom, Marcus is working on his startup idea. He needs quiet and space during the day. Do you think you could limit time in the kitchen during work hours, just until he gets some stuff off the ground? I stared at the message for a while, didn't respond, just turned my phone face down and walked to the corner thrift store to buy a second-hand microwave. I also picked up a little electric kettle and moved both upstairs. No complaints, no argument, just adjusting. Again, I told myself this was just temporary, that once Lauren settled into her job more, once Marcus got his project off the ground, things would shift, the house would feel lighter, they'd notice me again. But that shift never came. A few days later, I received the usual email from the bank. Mortgage payment of $4,920 successfully processed. I stared at it. No surprise, no emotion, just a number on a screen. A responsibility I never missed, even when I'd been left off the grocery list. That very evening, Ava sent another message. Mom, would you mind moving that little coffee table from the living room? It looks kinda old and doesn't match the vibe anymore. That little coffee table was a piece from my wedding. Bill and I had bought it secondhand back when we couldn't afford anything new. It had water rings and scratches, and the drawer handle had been replaced twice, but it was one of the last things I'd held on to from our early years together. I didn't reply to that message either. Just folded the phone back into its case and sat in silence. That night, I decided to do something different. I thought maybe if I reclaimed some small piece of the house, it might help. I went downstairs, turned on the living room TV, and sat on the sofa. Nothing grand. Just me and the evening news. I'd barely settled in when Marcus came down the stairs. "Oh," he said, stopping a few feet behind me. "You're not watching anything, are you? We're about to stream a movie with friends in like 5. He didn't even wait for an answer. I clicked the remote, turned off the screen, and stood up. "Of course," I said. He muttered something that sounded like thanks, but I didn't care to catch it. I walked back up the stairs, gripping the banister a little tighter than usual. Halfway up, I saw Lauren coming in through the front door. Our eyes met, just for a second. Then she looked away, brushed past me with a quick, "Hey," that barely qualified as acknowledgement. Ava's voice called out from the kitchen. "Did you bring the wine?" Lauren answered. "Yeah, I've got it." No one asked where I was going. No one cared that I was going at all. Back in my attic room, I sat at the edge of the bed for a long time before I reached for my journal. The leather was worn now, soft along the edges. I flipped to the last page and wrote, "When a mother no longer has a seat at the dinner table, when her name isn't in the weekend plans, when she walks into a room and gets no greeting, she's no longer a member of the family. She's an afterthought, a ghost in her own home." That was the first time I let the ideas sink in fully. Not just that I didn't belong, but that they didn't care if I did. The first night away from the house, I checked into a modest motel near the train station. It was one of those places where the carpet smelled faintly of mildew in the air. Conditioner groaned like an old man every time it kicked on. The bedspread was faded, some old floral pattern that had long since lost its charm. The mattress dipped in the middle, like too many people had slept with their disappointments here. I didn't bother turning on the TV. I set my grocery bag on the chipped particle board table, took out what was left. 2 unbroken eggs, the lavender still tied with twine, and the half-empty bag of waffle cookies. I filled the little electric kettle I'd brought from the attic room and boiled water in silence. I cracked one of the eggs into a mug, poured the hot water over it, and stirred slowly until it firmed. It was a trick Bill taught me years ago during camping trips. I sat at the table in that stale room, eating quietly, chewing slowly, pretending the food tasted like comfort. It didn't. That night, I barely slept. The train horns howled every few hours. My body ached, but not from the bed. It was the kind of ache that lives in your chest, settles in your bones. Monday morning, I woke up early and stared at the ceiling, wondering if I'd dreamed it all. But then, I looked around, saw the peeling wallpaper, the lavender laying limp on the table, and I remembered, no, this was real. I picked up my phone and called Lauren again, straight to voicemail. I tried Ava, but the call failed immediately. Blocked. The feeling was physical, like someone had placed a stone in my throat. Still, I tried to stay calm. I sent Lauren a message. I need to get some of my things. Please, let me come back for a moment. I waited for a reply. None came. By noon, I checked the family group chat. The name had been changed. My name was no longer listed. I wasn't part of it anymore. I wasn't just shut out of the house. I was erased. I tapped through Instagram out of reflex. I shouldn't have, but I did. Ava's latest story popped up. A bright, clean shot of the kitchen, my kitchen, with sunlight pouring over the countertops I had paid to replace last year. Her caption read, "Fresh space, fresh start, a clean home, a light heart." I stared at the screen for a while before locking the phone and setting it face down. It wasn't even anger that came first. It was something quieter, something sadder. I called myself, thinking maybe someone in the family would reach out. The phone rang 4 times, then voicemail. I left no message. I tried a cousin I used to be close with. She texted back an hour later. "I don't want to get involved in private family matters. Maybe just take some space and calm down." Calm down. That's what people say when they don't want to know the truth. That afternoon, I took the bus downtown to the bank. The teller was young, polite, probably no older than Ava. I asked if she could print out the last 2 years of my mortgage payments. She blinked at me. "Are these payments for your own home?" I shook my head. "No, I paid for my daughter's home. I just need a record proof." She typed something into her computer, printed a stack of pages, and slid them across the desk. "Here you go, ma'am." I thanked her, folded the papers neatly, and slipped them into a manila folder I'd brought in my tote bag. The folder looked thin for something that had drained so much from me. On the way back, I passed by the old apartment building I used to rent before moving in with the girls. The landlord, Mr. Peterson, was outside raking leaves. I approached the gate. "Hi, Jim." He looked up. "Diane, well, haven't seen you in a while." "I was wondering," I said carefully, "is 2C still available?" His smile faltered. No, sorry, just rented it out last month. I didn't know you'd be needing it again. Thought you'd settled in with your family." I gave a soft, humorless chuckle. "Yeah, I thought so too." He looked at me, eyes full of a sympathy he didn't know how to express. "I'll let you know if anything opens up." "You okay, Diane?" "I'm managing," I said. That evening, I walked along the lake trail near the neighborhood. The path curved gently, dotted with benches and joggers passing by with headphones in. I stopped near the far edge, the spot where you could see the back of my old house. Lights were on, the curtains were new, different. The lavender bush I had planted near the back fence had been trimmed down. From that distance, I heard laughter. It was faint, but unmistakable. I stood still, watching the house where I'd once thought I belonged. The place where I'd made soup, folded laundry, paid bills, mopped the floors, hung Christmas lights. There was no room for me there now. I returned to the motel. It was nearly dark. I sat on the bed, unfolded the manila folder, and went through the bank records one by one. Each payment listed clearly, always on the first of the month, always paid in full, 24 months. $4,920 per month, total $118,080. I put the final page down and stared at the numbers. That night, I took out a notepad and pen and began to draft a letter to the bank. I would like to cancel the automatic mortgage. Payment scheduled for the 3rd of each month. I am no longer involved in this household and should not be financially tied to the property. I stopped writing. I didn't sign it. I didn't send it. I folded it in half and tucked it back into the folder. I wasn't ready. Not yet. Before bed, I opened my journal again and wrote, "I haven't taken action yet. Maybe I'm still waiting for them to call, to explain, but I don't think they will." And I was right. Tuesday morning, sunlight came in sideways through the cheap, vinyl blinds of the motel room, slicing the stale air into neat yellow bars. Dust floated inside each bar like tired confetti from a party long over. I rubbed my eyes, pulled the little desk chair closer, and laid out my papers. 2 years of bank statements, each one stamped paid, and my battered leather notebook. The desk was fake oak, chipped at the corners, but it would do. First things first, tea. The motel offered instant coffee packets, but I still had a few bags of black tea in my purse. I filled the plastic bathroom cup from the sink, poured it into my electric kettle, waited for the soft click that meant it was done. Steam curled up and fogged the greasy mirror above the dresser. I dropped the tea bag into a paper cup, watched the water darken, then took a slow sip. Bitter but warm. Good enough. I opened the notebook. Last night's sentence stared back at me. I'm still waiting for them to explain. Underneath, the page was blank, as if daring me to write something braver. I closed the cover instead and lifted the laptop lid. The screen glowed blue, asked for my password. My hands hesitated on the keys. The joints were stiff this morning. I typed, clicked, waited for the dashboard of my bank account to load. There, it was, in neat corporate font. Scheduled payments, mortgage number FSTO 921, $4,920. Next payment 1203. The number might as well have been carved in stone. For 24 months, it had shown up like rent on my sanity. Always green, always on time. I moved the cursor toward the cancel button. My finger trembled, not from fear exactly, but from a weight I hadn't set down in 2 years. The tiny arrow hovered. I could hear my own breathing, slow and uneven. A thought flashed. What if they call me crazy? Another, what if they finally understand? The screen blinked a confirmation box. Are you sure you want to stop this recurring payment? I whispered. Yes, I'm sure, though no one could hear me, not even the laptop. I clicked confirm. Nothing dramatic happened. No sirens, no pop-ups begging me to reconsider. Just a dull line of text. Recurring payments successfully cancelled. For a full minute, I stared at that sentence. My shoulders dropped, surprised by how heavy they'd been. I hadn't felt them relax in months. I opened a new email window and began to type, Dear First Security Trust, I am no longer a legal party to mortgage. #FSTO 921. Previous payments were made as temporary assistance to the property's owners, effective immediately. I will make no further transactions regarding this loan. Sincerely, Diane Parker. I read it twice, short, clean, undeniable, then hit send. The whoosh of the outgoing mail felt louder than it was, like a door closing in a quiet house. I shut the laptop, folded the bank statements, and slid everything back into the manila folder. The motel's dresser had a narrow drawer with a flimsy lock. I turned the tiny key anyway and gave the handle a test tug. It held. I walked to the window and lifted the blind a few inches. Outside, a yellow school bus rumbled past, brakes squealing at the corner. A dog barked in some distant backyard, sharp, territorial, alive. Morning in America carried on, utterly unaware that a small revolution had just taken place in room 8. I set the teacup on the sill, let the steam drift into the cold air leaking through the frame. My pulse finally slowed to something normal. Somewhere inside me, a quiet voice, maybe Bill's, maybe my own, said, You did right. Back at the desk, I opened the notebook to a fresh page and wrote, slowly, pressing hard enough that the pen etched the paper, I'm not retreating. I'm simply handing the weight back to the shoulders that chose it. I capped the pen, closed the notebook, and placed it on top of the locked drawer, like sealing a letter to the past. Then, I breathed, really breathed. For the first time in 2 years, the air felt like it belonged to me. Thursday morning, 48 hours after I'd clicked cancel, I was standing at the shallow sink in the motel room, peeling an apple with my pocket knife. The small blade slid under the skin in one long red ribbon. Halfway through the second slice, my phone started buzzing across the nightstand. 1 ring, 2, 3. It went silent, then buzzed again almost immediately. I wiped my hands on a paper towel and looked. 5 missed calls from Lauren, 2 from an unknown number, and 1 new voicemail from Ava. The screen still showed 7:18 a.m. I pressed play. Ava's voice exploded into the quiet room, high and ragged. Mom, what the hell are you doing? The bank called me. Do you get that? They said the mortgage payment bounced because you canceled it. Lauren swears you're just trying to scare us, but the bank says it's real. Are you trying to get us evicted? Call me back, right now. The message ended with a sharp exhale, like she'd run out of breath. Before I could set the phone down, a text from Lauren flashed. Mom, you can't do this. We're family. No matter what's happened, we act for the common good. Call me immediately. I let the phone face down on the table. The motel's clock radio sat beside it, already tuned to the AM station I used for company. I turned the volume up a notch. The morning host announced a song, and Simon and Garfunkel drifted out. Hello darkness, my old friend. I almost laughed at the irony. The calls slowed by mid-afternoon, but the fallout kept coming. I opened my email and saw Marcus's name in the inbox, subject line in all caps, 5-day grace offer. I clicked, Diane, I know you're upset, and I'm sorry for whatever misunderstanding happened, but freezing the mortgage hurts all of us. If you reinstate the payment within 5 days, we'll meet to create a fair cost-sharing plan. Let's not let emotions destroy what we've built. No greeting, no snaffa proposition, nothing more. I didn't reply. Instead, I shut the laptop and stared at the ceiling, listening to the tinny hum of the room's air unit. Somewhere down the hall, a child laughed. The sound felt miles away. That evening, my inbox pinged again. 4 forwards from distant relatives. Each contained screenshots of the family group chat, the same group that had erased me days before. Ava, mom's having some kind of breakdown. She's sabotaging her own kids. Lauren, I can't believe she'd risk us losing everything. She's never been rational when she's jealous. A cousin chimed in, who ruins their children's future like that. Another relative, maybe she needs help. This sounds like a control issue. They never used my name, just she or her or mom, like I was a rumor. I read every line twice, then closed the laptop for good. Before bed, I opened each streaming account I still subsidized, Amazon, Netflix, Spotify, and deleted my card information. 1 click here, 1 click there. Payment method removed. Quiet, bloodless surgery. The phone rang again. Lauren. I almost ignored it, then answered. Her voice was small, flatlined with panic. Mom, please. Are you doing this because you feel we don't value you? We just needed time to get our finances straight. You blindsided us. I sat on the edge of the bed, feet on the threadbare carpet. Lauren, I said, calm as I could manage. I wasn't important to the house, except for paying its bills. I stopped doing the important thing. She inhaled sharply, like the words stung. But you're our mother. I was your creditor, I corrected, and the loan just matured. I pressed end before she could answer. I opened my notebook, flipped past pages of neat cursive until I reached a blank. The room buzzed with that motel hush, traffic rumbling beyond the wall, pipes ticking overhead. I wrote, "It isn't my absence that hurts them tonight, it's the absence of my wallet." I set the pen down, turned off the light, and lay in the dark. Somewhere outside, a train whistle sounded, long and lonely. For the first time in years, it felt like the noise was headed away from me, not bearing down. Saturday morning, I dressed neatly, brushed slacks, a soft cardigan, my low shoes, the kind of outfit I used to wear to parent-teacher conferences or Sunday brunches. One added a little lipstick, mostly for myself. Then I slipped the folder into my purse, 2 years of mortgage statements, the email I'd sent to the bank, and a printout of Lauren's message about changing the locks. I was early to Nora Martinez's office. The building was tucked between a laundromat and a nail salon on the quieter side of downtown. There was a sign above the door, modest and painted in warm tones, Martinez Legal Services, with a sunflower beside it. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cinnamon and old paper. The waiting area had mismatched chairs, a chipped side table with a stack of outdated magazines, and a painting of a field of sunflowers hanging crooked behind the receptionist's desk. The receptionist, a young man with kind eyes and a nervous smile, offered me tea while I waited. "She's just finishing with someone," he said. When Nora stepped into the lobby, she gave me a firm handshake and led me back to a small office that felt more like a counselor's room than a law firm. Framed diplomas hung beside more sunflower prints. I sat across from her, placing the folder gently on her desk. "I'm not looking to sue anyone," I told her right away. "I just want clarity. I want to know where I stand." "Understood," she said, flipping open the folder with practiced calm. She read through the documents carefully, didn't rush, took her time with each page. When she finished, she leaned back in her chair, hands folded over her lap. "Mrs. Parker," she said, "you have no legal obligation to that property. Your name isn't on the deed, the mortgage, or any ownership document. What you've done, paying for 2 years, was voluntary. Generous, certainly, but not legally binding." I nodded, unsure if the relief I felt was real or just habit. "So if they come after me, emotionally, financially, they can't," she said firmly. "And if they try, we'll issue a formal statement, on letterhead, declaring you have no financial ties. We can even prepare one today, if you'd like." I looked out the small window beside her desk. A parking lot, a dumpster, a patch of stubborn weeds breaking through the concrete. It looked like freedom to me. "Yes," I said, "I'd like that." She smiled and began typing. That afternoon, I had another appointment. Jack Benson, therapist, semi-retired, and once one of Bill's closest friends. I hadn't seen him in years, not since Bill's funeral, where he stood in the back with his hands folded and eyes soft with grief. His office was in an old converted house near the park. When I walked in, I smelled the same eucalyptus oil he used to keep in his car. The scent hit me like a memory. We sat in 2 armchairs facing each other, with a small table between us, a box of tissues, a ticking clock. Nothing dramatic, just calm. I told him what had happened, not every detail, just the broad strokes. The locks changed, the silence, the mortgage, the void. He didn't interrupt. He nodded as I spoke, eyes steady on mine. When I finished, he sat back and asked one question. Diane, do you feel like you were loved in that house, or just useful? I blinked, my throat tightened. I used to think those were the same thing, I said. He nodded again. A lot of people do, especially women raised to believe that being needed is the same as being valued. I didn't answer right away. He continued. You were playing a role, the mother who endures, who pays, who makes things easier. And when you stopped playing that role, they didn't know what to do with you. That's not love, Diane. That's convenience. I swallowed hard. My hands were clenched in my lap without me realizing. It's not your fault, he said gently. But it is your responsibility too. Stop letting people drain you in the name of family. We sat in silence for a minute. Then I said, I'm not angry. You don't have to be. You just have to stop giving where there's no respect. He walked me to the door and gave my shoulder a light squeeze. You're not broken, Diane. You're just done pretending. That evening, back at the motel, I opened the drawer beside the bed and pulled out a pad of stationery I'd bought from the Dollar Tree. A small stack of pale yellow sheets with sunflowers printed in the corners. I sat at the desk, took out my pen, and wrote slowly, with more purpose than I'd written anything in years. To Diane Parker, from this day forward, you are not a provider for those who don't respect you. You are not an emergency fund, a backup plan, or a silent supporter. You are not just mom or the one who pays. You are a person. You are allowed to want peace. You are allowed to stop giving. You are allowed to start again. I signed it, with love, Diane. I folded the letter, slipped it into an envelope, and wrote my own name on the front. Then I sealed it and placed it in my purse. The next morning, I walked to the post office and mailed it to myself. A week from now, it would arrive at this very motel, addressed to me. A reminder, a beginning. Sunday morning, the phone rang just as I finished my second cup of tea. The motel room was quiet, the air still with the smell of yesterday's coffee and the faint trace of eucalyptus I'd started dabbing behind my ears for calm. I let the phone ring twice before answering. It was Janice, my cousin on Bill's side. Her voice came in low, as if she wasn't sure I'd pick up. Hey, Diane, listen. The girls are planning a family meeting today at my place. Around 4. I said nothing, waiting for the inevitable. They've asked me to call you, said you're invited. Well, through me, Lauren, Ava, Marcus, they'll all be there. A few others too. I think it's best if you come. I sat in silence for a few seconds, then replied, I'll come. But I'm not coming alone. She hesitated. You're bringing someone? My lawyer, I said, calm and plain. Her name's Nora Martinez. Janice paused again, then sighed. All right, just be prepared. It's tense. I've lived tense, I said. I'm not scared of a couch and some awkward conversation. At 3:45, I arrived at Janice's house. Nora walked beside me, wearing a navy blazer and slacks, her sunflower pin fixed to her lapel. She didn't carry a briefcase, just a slim folder under one arm. Professional, but not intimidating. The moment I stepped into the living room, the tension was thick enough to taste. Lauren sat upright on the far end of the couch, ankles crossed, arms rigid. Ava was across from her, legs crossed, arms folded tight across her chest. Marcus sat slightly off to the side, perched on the ottoman like he wasn't sure whether he belonged. A few familiar faces dotted the room. Bill's brother Richard, one of his nieces, and Janice standing awkwardly by the doorframe, holding a tray of untouched lemonade. No one said hello. I walked in, set my folder gently on the coffee table, and sat down. Nora remained standing, quiet, taking in the room. Lauren was the first to speak. Her voice was clipped, trying too hard to sound composed. Mom, this whole thing has gone too far. You've put the entire house at risk. That home is part of our family's legacy. You could cost us everything." Before I could respond, Ava cut in. "We just needed space, Mom. That's all. Some privacy. And now you're doing this. Out of revenge." I didn't flinch. I reached into my bag, pulled out the folder, and placed it on the table in front of me. "Let me get this straight," I said, steady as stone. "You changed the locks. You sent a text through Lauren, no less, telling me I wasn't welcome. And you expected I'd continue paying the mortgage for a house I couldn't enter." Silence. You could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. I looked at Ava. Her eyes flickered away. I looked at Lauren, who blinked fast and glanced at the floor. I kept going. "Not once, not one of you asked if I was okay. Not one of you offered to meet me. You just deleted me. Like I was a broken appliance." Marcus cleared his throat. "I think maybe things got out of hand. There's room to." Nora stepped forward then. Calm, but clear. "There's no misunderstanding," she said. "Legally, Mrs. Parker has no obligation to the property. Her name is not on the deed, loan, or mortgage. Every payment made in the last 24 months was voluntary, and frankly, if defamatory statements continue, we can pursue recovery of funds or legal protection." Ava stood up suddenly, pointing at Nora. "Who even is she, Mom, really? You brought a lawyer to threaten your own kids." I turned to Ava. "She's not here to threaten. She's here to speak for me, since you clearly stopped listening." Lauren looked up finally, her voice cracking. "So what do you want, Mom? You want the house? You want us to sign it over to you?" I shook my head slowly. "No, I don't want the house. I don't want anything. I just want to walk away without being called bitter, or crazy, or a burden. That's all." I opened the folder and pulled out a stack of bank statements, neatly clipped together. "These," I said, laying them flat on the table, "are records of every mortgage payment I made over the last 2 years, 24 months, $4,920 per month. Total, $118,000. I let the numbers sit in the air. You can call that a gift, an obligation, or stupidity. But from this day forward, I'm no longer connected to that house. Not legally, not financially, not emotionally. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. I picked up my purse and stood. Whoever needs me will know how to knock on my door. But if all you ever needed was my money, then I'm not the one missing anymore." I glanced one last time around the room. Lauren's eyes were glassy. Ava's jaw clenched. Marcus now quietly examining his shoes. The others avoided my gaze. Then I walked out. No one stopped me. No one called my name. A few days after moving in, I stopped by a small independent bookstore called Crescent Pages. I'd seen the hand-drawn help wanted sign taped to the door. Inside, the air smelled like vanilla candles and paper. The shelves were uneven, the carpet worn in spots, but everything felt deliberate, lived in. There was a cat sleeping on a blanket in the corner, a tabby with one ear slightly bent. Behind the counter stood an older woman in a faded, pink sweater that had a picture of a cat reading a book on the front. She was squinting at a receipt. "Can I help you?" she asked without looking up. I saw the sign in the window. I said, "I'm looking for part-time work. Nothing heavy, just enough to stay busy." She looked up then. Her eyes scanned me, my plain cardigan, my sensible shoes, my face that probably looked a little older than I felt. "You read?" she asked. "I do." "You alphabetize fluently." She grinned. "We pay cash, we close early, and we don't argue about Hemingway." I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in a long while. "Deal." She handed me a small pin that read staff, crookedly laminated. "Name's Martha. Don't talk politics with the customers, and if the cat pees on the sale bin, just flip the books over." Working at Crescent Pages didn't pay much, but it gave me something that I hadn't had in years, a rhythm, a place to be, people who talked to me without expecting anything. I learned the regulars quickly. Mr. Alcott, who came in every Tuesday, asking for World War II history books but never bought any. Jamie, a teenager who sat in the poetry section for hours, quietly mouthing the words. Martha never asked about my past. Not once. "You used to do marketing?" she asked casually one afternoon while we stocked the romance section. "A long time ago," I replied, "back when people still read magazines." "You want to help me redo our newsletter?" she asked, flipping through a dog-eared clipboard. "It's ugly as sin." I smiled. "I'd love to." Each morning, I walked along the lake trail before work. I kept a notebook in my coat pocket and jotted down small things. The lake misting like breath. The fourth bench missing a slat. A calico cat with a heart-shaped patch on her shoulder. I didn't write for anyone else anymore. Just me. One night, after a long day at the store, I finally sat down and began untangling myself from the digital remnants of my old life. I logged into every shared account, Netflix, Spotify, Amazon, and removed my card, every single one. Then I changed all my passwords, something I'd never done before. I wrote them down in a fresh notebook, labeled it mine, and tucked it away in the drawer of the wobbly desk. Later that night, an email came through from Ava. The subject line said, "We need to talk about the house." I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. "Mom, we've been talking. We know we overreacted. If you're willing to resume support, just for a while, we can talk about you living with us again. We want to rebuild things, but we need help right now. It's urgent." There was no apology. No, how are you? Just urgency and conditions. I clicked move to spam. Then, as an afterthought, I blocked her email entirely. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I just went to the kitchen and made myself a cup of tea. That weekend, I took a pottery class at the local community center. I didn't tell anyone. I just signed up, showed up, and sat at the wheel like I'd belonged there all my life. Our instructor, Chloe, was younger than Ava, maybe 25, with blue hair pulled back in a messy bun. She wore paint-splattered overalls and spoke like everything she said was a secret she was letting you in on. She watched me fumble with the wet clay for a minute, then came over and knelt beside me. "Don't force it," she said gently. "The clay already knows what it wants to be." I looked down at the uneven bowl I was trying to shape. It was lopsided and cracked near the base. "I think it wants to be a mistake," I said. Chloe smiled. "There are no mistakes, only personality." I laughed. "That's what people say when their cat knocks over the vase." "Well," she said, standing, "maybe the vase needed to learn how to fall." I didn't know whether to be annoyed or inspired, but I kept working. My hands found a rhythm, thumbs, steady, breath even. By the end of the class, I had made something resembling a vase, though the top wobbled and the sides caved slightly inward. It wasn't beautiful, but it was mine. "I think I'll name it," I said aloud as I cleaned the clay from my fingers. Chloe looked over. "What name?" "Imperfect," I said, "but mine." That evening, I placed the vase on the windowsill next to my desk. The sunlight from earlier still clung to the sill in streaks, catching on the uneven glaze. I sat down and wrote in my journal, "They thought I wanted revenge, but I wanted peace. They thought I was angry, but I was just empty. They thought I would keep giving, but I've started keeping, not grudges, not bitterness, just myself." The kettle whistled gently behind me. I poured another cup of tea and watched the lake outside turn gold with the setting sun. For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't known I was missing. Not power, not vindication, not even closure, just stillness. And it was enough. It was a spring morning, the kind you don't expect after a long winter. Warm, bright, and quiet in all the right ways. I woke up before the sun had fully risen. My studio was bathed in that soft, early light, the kind that makes everything look gentler, even the worn-out rug beneath my feet. I opened the window. The breeze was cool but forgiving. I rested my hands on the sill, and the sunlight touched my skin like a small blessing. The maple tree just outside had started budding, tiny green shoots, reaching upward like children, still unsure of their balance. The kettle whistled. I didn't make tea that morning. I brewed a cup of coffee instead, something bold. I carried it over to my writing desk, the one I bought secondhand with the stubborn drawer and slanted leg, and sat down. On the windowsill, the crooked little vase from pottery class caught the morning light. It was ugly, endearing, and utterly mine. I reached out, let my fingertips trace its edges. I had shaped it with my own hands, bent, flawed, unfinished, but still standing. My phone buzzed on the table beside me. I ignored it for a few moments, savoring the silence. But when it buzzed again, I reached for it. A new email. From Lauren. Subject, "I'm sorry." My heart didn't race. My stomach didn't twist. I just opened it. "Mom, I'm not writing to ask you to come back, and I'm not asking for help. I'm writing to apologize. I knew what Ava was doing. I knew it when she changed the locks. I knew it when she blocked your calls. But I didn't stop her. I kept quiet because I thought it was easier. I told myself it wasn't my fight, but it was. It always was. I watched it happen, and I didn't speak up. I'm sorry I left you alone in that house. I hope you're okay. I hope you're free. Lauren, I stared at the screen for a long while. I didn't cry. I didn't feel the familiar burn of betrayal or the urge to yell, accuse, or question. What I felt was a quiet kind of sadness, and beside it, a steadier kind of peace. I began typing. Lauren, thank you for your message. I forgive you, but I need time. Not because I'm angry. Not even because I'm hurt anymore, but because I'm just starting to find my way back to myself, and I want to stay here a little while. Take care of yourself. Love, Mom. I clicked send. There was no follow-up, no ding, no rush of relief. Just me, sitting quietly beside the morning. Later that day, at the bookstore, Martha waved me into the back room. She was wearing one of her usual loud sweaters. This one had 3 kittens juggling books. Diane, she said, waving a hand toward the tiny break room table. Sit. I made sandwiches. Don't argue. I sat down, and she handed me a cup of lukewarm coffee and a ham sandwich wrapped in wax paper. We've had a good few weeks, she said, sitting across from me. Customers love you. You've got a steady hand. You know how to listen. And you don't waste time pretending to care about bestsellers you hate. I laughed softly. You noticed that? Oh, I noticed everything. That's why I'm offering you more hours, if you want them. I blinked. Really, full afternoons. A little more marketing work. I can't pay you much, but it's yours if you want it. I nodded. I do. Thank you. She studied me for a beat. Can I ask something personal? I braced myself. You can ask. That email you got last week. You sat back here reading it. You looked like someone had cracked open your ribs. I smiled faintly. It was from my daughter. She apologized. Martha nodded slowly, and I forgave her. But I didn't go running back. Good. She sipped her coffee. Sometimes, forgiveness is a door you don't walk through. Just one, you unlock so you can breathe. We sat there quietly for a while. 2 older women, drinking bad coffee, surrounded by discount calendars and used bookmarks. And for the first time in years, I felt seen. That Saturday, I went to meditation class. Again, Nancy was already there. Retired science teacher, always early, always smelled faintly of lilacs. Mike came in late, as usual, clutching a cold thermos and wearing the same frayed denim jacket. Grace, the widow with the strength stone in her. Parker smiled at me when I took my spot on the mat beside her. We didn't talk much, but during our tea break afterward, Mike turned to me and asked, So Diane, you been in town long? I thought about it. Long enough to start over, I said. Family around? He asked. I hesitated, then shook my head. Not really, just me these days. Grace leaned over, nudged her elbow into my arm gently. Sometimes that's enough. We talked about books, about birds returning early this spring, about back pain and air fryers and the price of lettuce. No one asked who I used to be. No one asked what went wrong. It felt like freedom. A few days later, I found myself walking through my old neighborhood. I wasn't planning to. My feet just wandered that way. Muscle memory, maybe. I stopped across the street from the house. A for sale sign had been staked into the lawn. The windows were dressed with new curtains, soft beige ones that didn't suit the shape of the windows. The porch light was on, though it was 2 in the afternoon. A habit, or maybe someone forgot to care. The flower pots were empty. The lavender bush I planted was brown and collapsed. The wreath on the front door was gone. I stood there, watching the wind shift the weeds on the edge of the yard, and I felt nothing sharp, just a clean space where pain used to live. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. That evening, back in my studio, I sat at my desk as the sun dipped behind the trees. The sky was pink, fading into soft gray. I poured myself a glass of water and reached for my journal. I flipped to the last page and wrote, They don't need me. That's okay. I need myself. And that, finally, is enough. I placed the pen down, stood up, and opened the window. The wind that blew in was cool and gentle, brushing against my face like a mother would touch a child's cheek. The vase stood on the sill, catching the last of the light. I smiled at it. It hadn't changed shape, but I had. Tomorrow, I'd go to work, brew bad coffee, and restock shelves. I'd walk the lake path. I'd write down the names of the birds I saw and the way the clouds changed shape over the water. No one would ask me to pay their bills. No one would erase my name from a group chat, and no one would forget to invite me into the room, because this time, I was already inside my own life. From the depths of my heart, I want to share something with you. Yes, you, the one watching this video. Never let love become an excuse for someone to treat you like a walking wallet. Family ties mean nothing without respect. And sometimes, the deepest wound isn't betrayal. It's being forgotten in the very home you built with your own blood, tears, and trust. I am no longer the kind of mother who only knows how to sacrifice. I am a human being, and now, I choose to live for myself. If it were you, when a familiar door suddenly closes, what would you do? Would you keep begging for a place in someone else's heart? Or would you rise, gather the shattered pieces of yourself, and build a new life, even if it's small, even if it's uncertain, but wholly yours? I truly want to hear your answer. May God bless you, just as He blessed me with the courage to say goodbye to those who no longer needed me.